Welcome to another edition of Success Talk. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and today, we always interview guests who are doing great things, but who've had great challenges and who've overcome those challenges and made serious breakthroughs. So we have my good friend, a young man, and let's see, Kamo. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Say your whole name, because I don't want to mess it up.
All right. Siri Uwa Angzi Akutera.
All right. Can you do a little louder?
Yes, sir. It is
Okay.
Siri Uwa Angzi Akutera.
Now, does that name have a special meaning?
Yes, it is. It means black, majestic, sovereign of power whose ancestors from God watch over him.
Woo! You need to say that again, brother. We need to hear that.
Yes, sir. Black, majestic, sovereign of power whose ancestors from God watch over him.
Now, you have to tell me that. How did you get that name?
So I was born Langston Farmer,
Mm-hmm.
and as I got knowledge of self, in high school, coming out of high school and through those early years, those college, age years and on, my mom, used to always brag about my name and how she had come up with it because she thought it sounded like an English aristocrat. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, getting knowledge of self, it was like, but we aren't English. Like we have I'm not even black English where I have the accent or nothing. Like you have this infatuation with the English culture, and you see it as high society. And it's like that name doesn't really represent the work that I've committed my life to doing. So, I think another name is more appropriate. And I went through a naming ceremony process, and that's the name that came out.
Wow. Well, that name sort of set the tone for your whole life, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
Wow. So now tell a little about your background. Where were you born? Your family, your brothers and sisters. What was that like?
So I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm at now. Still, I've left and come back a few times. And growing up, it was my mom, single mom. I have a 16-year older brother who was basically off into adulthood, headed into adulthood by the time my sister and I came along. So my mom raised him, and pretty much got to the end as far as childhood with him, and so I actually wanted to have two more with a different man, which was my father. So he's my half brother. And then my younger sister, who's a year younger,
Mhm.
who was, of course, right there with me living, growing up. And so um, my older brother was more like a father figure, being so much older. And it was a blessing in disguise because, my father not being there at all and really not being interested in being there, my older brother really stepped up and became my superhero from a male perspective, a black male
Mhm.
perspective. And then
Mhm.
my mom, a very just common sense wise, brilliant, didn't have the opportunity coming from West Virginia to really do a
Mm.
lot of formal education, but loved to read and was very much so an autodidact, and instilled that in me. And my brother was a technologist, and so they used technology and books to keep me grounded and keep me from falling by the wayside.
Mm. That's so important, man. That somebody, you know, Kamo, if I look at all the people I interview, almost to the person, there's somebody, that one person who makes a difference, who really, is like that bridge, that light in the darkness. And you just confirmed that all over again. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now,
Pretty big homage.
yeah, yeah. So now, where did you go to school, and what was your normal life before you became an entrepreneur and a man on a mission?
Absolutely. So, coming out of high school, I was supposed to go to Tuskegee. I've been on a Black college tour with an organization called End Zone. It's a lady here. She was a teacher. I don't think she was a teacher at the time. She may have been, but I think she's a principal now. And I just had really introduced, opened our eyes. We had seen a different world in our, Black community growing up, but going to these HBCUs as a high schooler was just like, it was eye opening. It was like everything we dreamed of and more. And we did that during a spring break my junior year. And so I got a chance to go to Tuskegee's campus among several others. We went through the CAU. We went through Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Like we went through, I think probably 15 schools in 7 days. I mean, it was phenomenal. But with that, I was like, I want to go to Tuskegee. Applied, got accepted, scored second highest on the ACT in my high school. But I was the kid that knew how to game the system. I was too smart for my own good. With my mom and my brother, exposed me to books and technology. Um, I was able to do things that my peers weren't, and understand the systems and mechanisms and how to use those to my own benefit and detriment. And so with that, I had a very low GPA, but I scored second highest on ACT. And the reason that's relevant is because when it came time to go to Tuskegee, I got accepted, but I couldn't qualify for any grants, any scholarships, anything, because my GPA was under a 2.0.
Mm.
So score salutatorian, but it didn't matter. So I was able to get all of my need met, up to about $10,000. And my dad, being the deadbeat that I said, I mentioned before, he had kind of popped back into me and my sister's lives later in those high school years. And so he was like, I want to do what I can to help you out. He has a master's in engineering. He's a mechanical engineer, brilliant, brilliant man, to his own right. And so he's like, I understand the value of education, so I want to help you out. I want to, whatever unmet needs you have, I want to cover that, and I have an option at my job where they'll give us a loan, educational loan for our children, to cover their unmet needs. So he's like, I'm gonna get a loan for $10,000. I'll let you keep you updated as things develop. It's pretty much all guaranteed. So I'm like, okay, cool. So, going through my senior year, he applied for it, he got it. Come the summertime, he's like, they should be dispersing it soon. I had connected with my dorm mate, my assigned dorm mate, had all the things on my list of things to bring down, had my class schedule, went and got the rental car, like everything's packed. Sunday night, we had it all ready to go. Mom just driving me down there when dad comes with the check Monday morning, talk to him that night, I'll see you Monday morning, 9 a.m., bright and early. Monday morning, I'm up and dressed, sitting there waiting. 9 a.m. comes, he's not there. 10 a.m. comes, he's not there. Noon comes, he's not there. The next day comes, he's not there. The third day comes, he's not there. My mom finally just said, go and pack the car. I guess you're going to the local community college. That's, I don't know what to tell you. She didn't have good credit. She wasn't necessarily financially savvy, so there was no savings or anything like that. 529, nothing like that. And so I enrolled to community college. I was devastated. And I remember thinking to myself, when she told me that, I remember looking out the door at the rental car with all the stuff packed. Like I almost got out of this raggedy blank city. Like I was almost out. All my friends are going to, Kentucky State and Tennessee State and Hampton and Clark, and there's all these places. I'm the only one that's stuck in Dayton, like,
Yeah.
so I was looking out the door and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is the beginning of the rest of my life. I know this is a defining moment. Like I'm aware enough to know that this is going to set the tone based off what I decide to do from this point. Like I can't put it on anybody no more. I can't skim my
Wow.
way through. Like I was acutely aware of that fact. And I remember going down a list of options I had, and I was like, all my cousins, most of them are in the streets. I could easily get a pack and get on. Like, I grew up around it. I never got into that world because I had my older brother and my mom, but I'm like, it's no problem for me to do that, and I have a justified case in what just happened to me. Like, I'm thinking all this in the moment, looking out the door when she told me that. And I found out I'm not going to Tuskegee. And it was like, I scratched that off the list. Like, no, that doesn't make sense, because everybody be like, you had your mom and your brother. There's no way you should have made that decision. So
Mm.
then it was like, well, I could just go get a job and just kind of like put my head down and hope that works. And I'm like, but my spirit, like I want to do more, because in high school I was going through a program that was bringing us to knowledge of self. So that's what I mentioned earlier, the name change and all that. That was preempted by, in high school I was in a program called ABLE. It was a professor at the local community college that I ended up enrolling in, that taught African American studies and African American psychology. He was a psychology professor, Liberian national, Dr. Boyka Tway, and he was basically bringing the young men who were kind of like the de facto leaders of all the respective cliques, whether, you were a jock, whether you were, somebody who's in the streets and popular because you had money and was driving a car already, whether you were an artist, a tech person, a gamer, like whatever your role was, he brought us all together. And then he would just have conversations with us, and he had different um, programming and different things where he was not preaching to us, but helping us understand this is what it means to come into the world as a young Black man and what is going to be expected of you. Like high school has ill-equipped you for reality, and you get out here, you cannot use that excuse. They don't care. You are now just on your own, completely self-reliant, whether you realize it or not. This has been a big daycare, really. Like it has not prepared you for what you're going to face in the real world. And so with that, I was brought to knowledge of self and aware of my Blackness and like different things that just came, from the past that came forward. I was like, oh, that's what all this stuff that I'm seeing, what's wrong with the community and the churches, everything. Like it all started making sense. And I'm like, well, I want to be an activist. Naturally, like that's what I want to do. I know I want to do that. And I was like, I don't know how I want to do it though. And so when that whole thing happened with the loan thing, fast forwarding back to that, and I'm standing in the doorway, I was like, the third option, I was like, entrepreneurship. Like I hear people talk about that, but I don't know what that is. Like, how does a person just start a business? Like, I know that that's a thing. I know it means freedom. I know enough about to know that it looks like it means freedom. It means that, you can create, and my dad being an engineer, my brother being a software engineer, my dad being mechanical, they both influenced me. Like I was an engineer in my spirit. My mom was an engineer in her own way, social engineer, but I was aware of my ability to create, to like close my eyes and see things. I had notebooks where I sketched, out ideas for things and designs and products. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing at 5 or 6. Also in high school, I started when this is 2000, middle school, going to high school, like 98, 2000, time frame, when CD burners first hit your retail shelves. Me being a tech guy, I always had a computer in my house. I had a computer before, I could walk because of my older brother. And my mom at her job at Children's Medical Center here in Dayton, they let her get a credit every year, like $5,000, $10,000 credit to buy, as much as she could up to that limit from CompUSA, which was like Best Buy, Circuit City, et cetera.
Right.
And that allowed us to buy, anything, the latest and greatest of all computer peripherals, anything,
Wow.
motherboard, video
Yeah.
cards, et cetera. So that every year during, middle school, high school, when that program started, we're able to go and get the latest and greatest, the most RAM, the hard drives, all the stuff. So I convinced her to use 1,000 of that to buy a CD burner when they first hit the shelves. When a 2X CD burner was $1,000, it didn't come in the computer. You had to buy it standalone. And the discs were still like $1, $2 per blank CD. Like this is like when they first hit the shelves.
Wow.
Ended up getting
Kamo,
one. Yes, sir.
as you're sharing the story, I wanted to there were some learning points here that are really important. And
Yes,
I'm gonna go back to the very beginning when you were talking about like that program End Zone,
yes,
of
sir.
how important it is for those, especially Black men, um, men of conscience and color, especially to be involved in the lives of young people like yourself.
Yes,
And
sir.
that those kind of programs, and it's funny, so often those are the first programs that get defunded. you
Yes,
know,
sir.
they're the first one that's like, we don't need all this. We need to be teaching these kids how to do something else. And
A
those are those,
believer.
yeah, those are those life-changing programs. And so I just wanted to make that point, that
Sir.
especially to young people, that when you have programs like that, get involved. Don't let, because I'm
Absolutely.
sure there was some young folks that, man, you shouldn't be you could be out on the block, you could be in the hood.
Absolutely. On spring break, you
Yeah,
going to a college spring break like you crazy, bro. That's a waste of time. Like
yeah, man, you need to be out
you gonna
here
waste
hanging.
that. Yep.
Yeah, And so I just wanted to hit that point. So for young people, when you see these type of programs, these things can be life altering, can really change your
Absolutely.
life. And even to, we have a lot of business people watch our program and listen to our podcast, and to let them understand that better, especially you might say the broader business community and even the Black community. And number one, our business people need to be putting more money into these type of programs. You don't have to wait to go to the Ford Foundation or this group or
Nope.
that
Nope.
group, but these are generally low budget programs.
Yes,
You know,
yes, sir.
because so
Yes.
often the people who do the programs are often volunteering their time, and so
Mhm.
that was a key point to make. A second point, the disappointment, the thing with when you didn't get a chance to go to Tuskegee, and how
Yes, sir.
when you believe and trust somebody, And I mean, when you did everything that you had to do to get where you wanted to go, and when they let you down, that can
Devastated.
that's devastating. That can knock some people out of the water where they never get back in the boat.
And but I was fortunate in my awareness. And I tell people, like, even now when I was telling, I still had to fight back tears because it hurt so bad at the time that I couldn't even feel it.
Wow.
Like I was, you know, so it was really like I knew if I'd let this stop me and I use this as a crutch, I'm gonna be here for the rest of my life. Like I knew this is the first test right out the gate. Like
Yes. Yes.
you can't.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's a powerful story, man. So you moved on up into the electronics, and so now just moving ahead a little bit, you you got into this neighborhood program, this program, this with your what do you call it, trap
A miracle
house.
Trap
Huh?
house, yes. That
Yes.
is all really influenced by this work. The entrepreneurship piece
Uh-huh.
ended up being like I realized the light bulb went off when I got into prepaid legal right after like I had that awareness that entrepreneurship makes sense. I don't know what that means. I ended up getting in prepaid legal and they told us to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I
Uh-huh.
read that book and I'm already autodidact. They gave us a book list. I'm like, you give me a book, I'll devour it. So I
Uh-huh.
read that book and the light bulb went off. And it's like, this is how I can be an activist. I need to learn these mechanisms of wealth that Robert Kiyosaki talked about in this book. And by then it was like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. So it just come out. It was still on the bestsellers list, still talking to town. And I ended up reading every book in this series at that point. But I
Mm.
realized if we can teach the people real estate, credit, the financial markets, and business acquisition or startup, then we can really put ourselves on and we don't need anybody to do anything for us. And so I decided I'm going to practice in each of these 4 areas for 3 to 4 years. I'm gonna put myself through my own MBA program. And I laid out a process that I built along the way where I learned these areas, practiced in them. And then my goal was once I got all four, reverse engineered into a system that I could use to get back to the people. That was 2003. So
Mm-hmm.
Trap House is something that I started the idea of 20 years ago. I didn't have
Mm.
the name for it, but what it is today is what I pledged to do when all that happened. At the time I read that book and the light bulb went off. Like this is gonna be my way of activism through economics, like through cooperative economics and through like wealth building and like reverse engineering, self reparations. So Trap House has become that place through which I can share what I've
Mm.
learned. I've spent time in all four of those areas, built businesses in all four of those areas, personally successful in all four of those areas, taught others in all four of those areas, and now it's come to a system. So I'm doing
Wow.
systempreneurship, ecosystem building.
Mm. Okay. Systempreneurship. Now that's powerful.
Yes, sir.
One of my good friends, young man who kind of a similar background. Every background is different, but he was a young man, and he eventually grew up to own a couple of McDonald's, and become a millionaire and just a successful businessman and consultant. And he was saying that and as a child, he and his brothers and sisters, they were evicted, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and
Mm-hmm.
and his mother painted such a picture that he didn't even know he'd been evicted. He thought they just found a new place to live, but
Yeah.
how he was able to always see the goalpost, to see that. And one of the things he often said was that when he realized that life is a system, and system, he said system means save yourself time, energy, and money.
Wow. I got to write that down.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yes.
Woo.
So when you said systems, I'm like, this young man, see, you were doing it.
Yes, sir. I was living it.
Yes, yes. Save yourself time, energy, and money.
I love it. That's perfect. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I do. Once I realized it's all systems, that's the master, theory of everything, like understand the systems and subsystems and the components, and you can connect disparate systems because you know that they interface at certain points. And it just becomes, it locks in.
yes. Well, I think that was the underlying, allure for me of the Matrix, that whole series, because I
Yes, sir.
saw it as like all life is just a whole series of programs and programs on programs on programs, and you often choose which program you're going to operate in, and so I
Yes,
like that.
sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. That's right.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes,
now,
sir.
now that you are in the program now, Trap House,
Yes,
where
sir.
what are you doing right now, and where do you see it going?
Yes, sir. So right now we're doing a proof of concept launch of our programming. We have several different offerings under our umbrella. We're going to be working with other SMEs to offer their expertises to communities and organizations, institutions alike. Entrepreneurship is something that can be taught. You probably heard of like the turtle traders, infamous, like, we're not infamous, famous or infamous trading challenge, but whether or not you could teach somebody to trade. And it's been proven that yes, somebody can learn how to trade. Same thing with entrepreneurship, same thing with thriving. Like thriving is something that is taught. We don't have thriving just inherently in our genetics. We come out with the abilities to thrive, but we have systems in place that prevent us from thriving, surviving, dare I say, like thriving isn't even a thought. With
Mm,
survival is, the challenge of the day, can you spend so much energy just trying to keep your head above water who you can't talk about a yacht. So
yeah.
we really have to look at these core models and break down these systems because entrepreneurship is a thing that has always put society, groups of people, in the upper echelons of society, and it's not something that is just reserved for, a particular class, artificially created class of people. So we want to democratize entrepreneurship. And even if
Mm,
you aren't a business owner, interested in being a business owner, entrepreneurship is a team sport. So, I'm big about like getting the community involved and telling them you have opportunities that are unprecedented. In the past, you could never invest in a startup. But you hear about all these companies that made all this money on these stocks, pre-IPO and such. Well, crowdfunding opens up the door to that being, a reality that you can participate in. Even not somebody as a founder, but you can be putting $100 away a month, towards a crowdfund, campaign of your choice every month, and that's your investment strategy. In addition to like your standard 401k and those things, but really saying like even if you don't want to be a business owner, because everybody's not cut out for that. I have several ways you can be involved in. In addition to being an investor, you can also look at how you can support business owners in the form of labor. If you are
mm,
somebody who'd rather have a job, we aren't demonizing that or shunning people for doing so. But the reality of the matter is 95% of all Black businesses in this country,
mhm,
95%, people don't get this, are sole proprietorships in truth. They are truly just single owner operated organizations. And as such, they really can be classified as a small business. People don't know the difference between a startup and a small business. They aren't really considered a startup because a startup still has somebody beyond the founder in the business. But 9.5 out of 10 of our businesses are sole proprietorship. So that means Black unemployment being abnormally high compared to other groups is a direct result of nobody working in Black businesses. So we
mhm,
can't talk about Black unemployment without talking about supporting Black businesses in every way, shape, and form.
mhm,
Because the other thing that people don't get on the juxtaposed side of that statistic is that 90% of all jobs in this country
mhm,
are created by companies that have 5 employees or less. Not Amazon,
mhm.
not Walmart. 5 employees or less create 9 out of 10 jobs in this country. So when we talk about Black unemployment, we're talking about supporting Black businesses, not just buying stuff from them,
Mhm.
but spending a few hours a week working for them as a fractional contractor or something. But I'm like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to participate in entrepreneurship, and you should be participating for everybody to win. And that's what
Wow.
Trap House is really pushing.
Yeah.
It's a team sport, community effort.
You know, Kamo, as you were talking, as a Black businessman myself, when you have a sole proprietorship, there's no legacy. In other words, a startup is a business, a company. When you have a
Yes,
sole
sir.
proprietorship, if the sole proprietor gets the flu or gets a cold or gets
It's over
COVID,
with.
it's over with. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
something that, we have to really get beyond that. And, that
Yes.
this interface, what you're doing really needs to be not just entrepreneurs people, looking to become entrepreneurs, but many of those sole proprietorships need to come under your umbrella to
That's
get
it.
a understanding of the systems interface, some of the things
Yes,
available to them, and ways that
yes,
they can structure themselves to create a legacy business.
absolutely. Scalable operations, the business credit, demystified, getting access to the idea of acquisition entrepreneurship, which is how a lot of businesses grow from the startup phase. They acquire or merge with existing businesses, and there's a huge wealth transfer occurring, which is, it's saddening to hear, but with so many of the baby boomers, transitioning, they are looking to be succeeded. And a lot of them never thought in a million years that they would be, getting older and selling their businesses. Y'all, everybody thinks they're going to live forever. And people also don't know, I'm big about statistical facts. 75% of all businesses in this country, 3 out of 4 actual small businesses, are
Mhm.
owned by baby boomers.
Yes,
In the
yes,
next, next 7 to 8 years, a large number of baby boomers will be out of the game totally. And they project $10 trillion worth of businesses will be available for acquisition or merger. And they project only 10%, 1 trillion of those 10 trillion will actually get acquired. Or,
right.
$1 trillion worth of revenue will actually go on to be succeeded. The rest of it
Uh-huh.
is going to evaporate because those businesses will
Evaporate.
close. Nobody will pick them up because nobody thinks acquisition entrepreneurship is viable. But I tell people you can get better terms to buy a business than you can to buy an apartment building.
Well, that's a whole nother level of talk, Kamo. We have to talk about that because, you very rarely hear of a black person buying a business.
Yes, sir. Absolutely right.
And, I know when I finished college, all my friends, all my classmates were
Yes,
white.
sir.
I had out of 700 graduates, there were only 2 blacks. And so, everybody I talked to, my roommates, all my friends were white. And all of them were talking about buying a business, either going into business or buying a business. And as I moved
Yes.
around the economic spectrum, I find, especially young white people, they buy businesses and sell them. I mean, just a simple business. I was talking to a fella, the simple business, the bubble gum machines in the grocery store.
Yes.
When you go and you
Yes.
buy bubble gum and the little trinkets in the machine, and the
Yes,
guy
sir.
says he owns 150 of them. And he
Mm.
bought that business from a guy who had done it and built it up. And, just like a sole proprietorship, he bought
Yeah.
it. And now he's talking about franchising it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes. And it's easy.
yeah. So, you are so far ahead of I mean, you really, the things that you're talking about, we need to have a whole piece with that whole sole proprietorship because so many black businesses. I know I have a
Yes.
son who is not particularly interested in my business.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've gone outside of the family to have people interested in the business. And it really is a disappointment, like,
Yes.
wow, I was looking at, a part of our business that is over the last 6 years could have been a $500,000 business.
Yes, sir.
And, once I was clear that he didn't want to do it, then I basically sold it and
Mm.
somebody else is reaping the rewards now. Okay.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, let me ask this because you have such a level of clarity. As you were
Yes, sir.
moving to this point, what was the biggest obstacles that once you get, decided where you want to go, what are the biggest obstacles that have attempted to hold you back and how did you make your breakthrough?
Just people not believing that, I mean, I'm not even in college dropped. I mean, I am because I went to Sinclair and dropped out, tried to go to other HBCUs, couldn't get the money for it. It's a whole, journey behind that. But I made the effort. Now, I didn't just stop there. I did try to go to Hampton and Tennessee State 2 years, succeeding. And each time like I didn't have the financial aid available.
Hmm.
My mom couldn't guarantee your sign, and my dad, like I said, was in the wind. So
Hmm.
um, with that though, I got to a point with everything, to where it's been people just thinking that I don't qualify. Like I don't. I'm not permitted into the club, even in our own community where people, people of color, black folks who were just like, who is this guy? Because he doesn't present the way that I'm used to in this talented 10th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that, and I can turn on switches all over the place. Like I've learned how to, be a chameleon in rooms. So it's like, but then a lot of times it's like sometimes I'm just wanting to be myself. Like sometimes I'm gonna walk in with a trench coat on and my baseball cap backwards, and it's like we can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and my image shouldn't disqualify me from any opportunity present in this room. But just
Mm-hmm.
because you don't feel comfortable with it, somehow I'm excluded. Somehow I'm excommunicated. So it's been a lot of that energy where people are like, because you don't want to play that game,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be permitted into the past the gate, and just really helping them understand that the difference between a alpha and the sigma male. I'm like, I don't subscribe to the alpha male ideology, never have, but once I became familiar with what a sigma male was, I'm like, I'm a sigma male. I'm
Mm-hmm.
somebody who exists out of that hierarchy in my own lane. Like I'm not threatened by anybody. There's
Mm-hmm.
never been when anybody throwing an obstacle in my face made me feel like, okay, it's over with. If anything, it was just like, now I have to figure out a way through or around or, above, below this. Like it's just another piece of the puzzle to deal with. And in that, I've incrementally grown over these 20 years to get to the point that I am now. And this undeniable fact that people who know me are
Mm-hmm.
like, there's nobody can question the experiential capital, the intellectual capital, the social capital. Like you built so many forms of capital in these 20 years of being like hardcore with all this work
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm getting the opportunities that are starting to flow, but it's been 20 years in the making. People be like, I don't get Trap House. Why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point? Why'd you stop doing real estate and start getting into the credit game? It's like it's all a journey for me. It was all like going through higher ed, getting my undergrad, master's, and PhD in my own way in this work. And that's what I set out to do. And I achieved that. And so I'm like, I can show on paper
Mm-hmm.
that, this is what it looked like over 20 years. But in the middle of it, people around me were like, I can't see it, bro. What are you doing? It's like you're just wasting time. And I'm like,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
committed 3 to 4 years in each one of these 4 areas. So I'm at least anywhere from 12 to 16 years on this track. Like, just like if I was going to be a doctor in
Right.
medicine,
Yeah.
my PhD in medicine, I would be on a 12-year track. But that wouldn't
Yes.
be foreign. But because I'm doing it my own way and I'm showing progress,
Yeah.
somehow I don't qualify. My way doesn't qualify. But now the proof
Wow.
is in the pudding, and it's open back up on the back end. So I tell people I'm an Afrofuturistic generalist. I can see beyond today, and I'm very much so focused on the broad spectrum and the entirety of it all. So
Mm.
a lot of times I'm talking to specialists who are very much so presentist or historians.
Mm.
Like they aren't futurists and they
Mm-hmm.
can't see the broad scope. They just see their lane right now or in the
Mm-hmm.
past.
Wow. Wow. You know, man, wow. Came, I love that. Afro-futuristic generalist. You've
Yes,
done
sir.
some you've been using you have to create the language to describe your situation and put the language
Yes, sir.
together in a way that
Yes,
people can understand what it is.
yes, sir.
That's a gift itself.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
now you've been in, let's just say 20 years in the game. When you look
Yes,
back
sir.
on your younger self, when you look back on the young man who was sitting on the porch waiting for your dad to bring the check, what
Mm-hmm.
advice now would you give your younger self?
Don't wait. Um, get out of your own head. I tell people like I can remember looking at pictures of myself and remembering, how much I hated what I saw in those pictures at the time as a kid, like coming out of high school, just like really low self-esteem. And my mom, as much as she brought the book piece to the table, she had her own traumas that she passed down from her childhood. And, in that it was a lot of like just personal self-hate that I had for my, just really for me. And it took me the first 10 years of that 20-year stretch to like get the confidence to really start to go for this stuff, to come out of like researcher mode into practitioner mode, because I was thinking, what are people going to think about my crooked teeth? What are people going to think about my acne? What are people going to think about me stuttering? What are people going to think, and just me being the one saying this? Like, I have all eyes on me, and this is the time. And if I mess this up, it's like, just all the stuff that was there. And it was like, I finally was able to transcend that. And, it may be controversial, and I'm a huge proponent. I was able to transcend that through psychedelics.
Mm.
Um, Psychedelics were what helped me break that negative thought cycle and get to the point to where, I was able to move with clarity and purpose and without restriction. And I'm a huge proponent to the point where I intend to start a business in the near future. Because Trap House is a venture development organization for the people, but we have a venture studio arm that creates businesses around like solving problems for disadvantaged communities. And with that, the next venture I'm going to create is going to be a research and development firm around ethogens and the impact for Black and Brown, bodies and race-based trauma, because so many of us are dealing with so much trauma that's generationally just amplified and passed down. Like, it's so distilled, the deeper it goes down in generations, that it's just becoming so poisonous, and we have to overcome it quick. And that was what stopped that negative voice in my head that always told me I couldn't do something, or I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't pretty enough, wasn't, smart enough, wasn't strong enough, just all this stuff.
Well, Kamo, that era of the psychedelics, I lived through that era. And, one of the thoughts of the time was, you can't think out of the box in the box. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Here I am in the box. I'm going to think out of the box. If you're in the box, your thoughts are in the box. And
Absolutely.
so at the time, psychedelics were being used to get a person out of the box. And it was interesting, though, because certain people who got out of the box, what they saw was so fearful. I mean, a lot of folks went off the deep end. Whatever they saw scared them or took them to a place where, the other side about getting out of the box is you might go to a place where you can't get back in.
Absolutely. It is. You definitely want to be tethered somehow.
Yeah.
And that's why with the work I'm doing, I don't recommend it just recreationally, carelessly.
Yeah.
But I do believe integrated therapy, because there's studies being done around it where 93% of the test subject in clinical trials around this are white men.
Yeah.
And the impacts it's having, 80-90% of the test subjects in these clinical trials are having overwhelmingly positive results.
Yes.
Hand over fist. And we are not looking at how it can impact women in gender-based trauma or people of color and race-based trauma. And just like cannabis, it's already happening. Like, there's this whole renaissance around psychedelics being completely embraced by the mental health community, because the antidepressants are cutting it. The Adderall is not cutting it.
Yeah.
Like, the stimulus, all this stuff is not cutting it.
Yeah.
And looking at psychedelics as like the way to plant medicine, and we're going to be left out of that fold once again.
Right. Wow. Now, I have just a couple of questions, because this has been one of the most fascinating interviews. And I think this interview is going to really show a depth to what you're doing, because what you're speaking on such a level that if a person just listens to a little piece of it, they might not get it. And so I'm glad
that's been my big challenge. Getting too much for people to, even in parts.
Yeah, here you come with a turkey, and all they want is a sandwich.
Yes, sir. The whole meal, the sides, the dessert, the whole thing.
Yeah. So now, if you look up the road in the future, you look about 20 years in the future, and someone once said to see where you want to be and then work backwards.
Yes,
if
sir.
you look 20 years in the future, based on all the things that you're doing now, what advice would you give your current self that will help you get to that future?
To really continue to be acutely aware of that mortality, and that the passage of time is never ceasing. And so that, mortality is guaranteed. Like, we are going to leave this planet. So what are you waiting for? What are you scared of? Like non-conditions, like it being a non-conditioned type of life. Like, don't hold back and allow what you're worried about people thinking today that you won't even remember 20 years from now. Don't allow them to stop you. any of them, anybody. Like even if it's your own mama, like as much you can love her, even if she becomes an obstacle, lovingly, respectfully, like overcome that obstacle too. Like let it all
Mm,
go.
yeah. Wow. I tell you, this is amazing. Now, now you just became familiar with the 12 universal laws of success, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, we got to get you some for your program. So you had a chance to read it yet?
Sir, I barely had a chance to read the stuff that I'm supposed to be reading. I shared just Trap House. I didn't even talk about Mod Fab and the containers,
Uh-huh.
converting containers into places people can live, work, and play. We got a factory here in Dayton where we're converting shipping containers into houses, offices, and that's meant to couple up with Trap House where we build infrastructure along with scaling sole proprietorships into small businesses. So we create Black Wall Street by supporting the businesses with Trap House and supporting the real estate development with Mod Fab. And together we create these corridors that become thriving neighborhoods and then build infill housing behind them. So with containers as well. So like I've been so busy with both of those things between having a manufacturing facility for Mod Fab and then I'm Trap House. I'm in so many schools and institutions, organizations. I'm just now starting to get into those partnerships with the Dr. Herbert Harris's of the world with the 12 universal laws. So I have several books to read from several practitioners because I have so many phenomenal people, brilliant people in my life. So I want to read it. I need a copy. I need a physical copy and I need to read it.
All right. It's on the way, so let's do
Yes, sir.
this. Um, your website, your contact information, because I want people to be
Yes,
able to reach you. What is your
yes,
website and
sir.
some of your contact information?
I'm gonna give you two of our link tree for Trap House and Mod Fab. If you type
Uh-huh.
linktr.ee/design to build, design to build, and then the other is /trep.house. Both of those will take you to the link trees for design to build and for Trep House. And it'll allow, you people to get familiar. We have several collateral pieces in there, pitch decks, videos, news segments, executive summaries for people just to get up to speed and understand that we're doing ecosystem building to bring our communities to, a position of actual being able to compete because it's a race and it really is a race and we are in last place.
Wow.
So
Wow. Well, Kamo, I tell you, man, I'm gonna make a commitment to you. We're gonna do at least another interview or two because the
yes,
intricacies and the things you talk about, you really have to see your line of reasoning and how it all evolved. I think that would be
yes,
very helpful. And so we look forward to having another interview, another series of interviews. I
thank you.
think there's a place for you and a lot of the things that we're doing. And any final words you'd like to share with your audience?
That it is, literally laws, principles, values that make the difference. Those deeply the most internal things make the most external change. So really, do that work on self. Development is the name of the game, whether it's personal, professional, real estate, it doesn't matter. Software development is all development. Keep developing.
Beautiful. Well, Kamo, thank you so much for being on our program. We're going to share it. We're going to post it. It's going to be a podcast. Thank
So,
you for bringing this insight to the world and to our listeners. Thank you for
yes.
being with us again on Success Talk because, we try to bring you different perspectives. And today, I'm going to tell you something, folks. We have brought you some breakthrough perspectives, some another way of thinking about things, thoughts from outside the box. So listen to this interview over and over and be alert because we're going to do some follow-up interviews to give some more insight. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
And folks, when you can grow through your challenges as this young man did, then you can truly be anything you want to be, do anything you want to do, and have anything you desire, always knowing that the best is yet to come. And so it is.